So, welcome to episode 30 of the Breaking Bio podcast, which is finally on the go. And today is May 10th. And we're doing a special episode today, but we'll bring on the guests first, or the hosts first. So we've got Bug.
Hi there, I'm Bug Girl. I'm coming to you from an undisclosed location in Ohio.
Hi, I'm Heidi Smith. I'm a postdoc at UT Austin.
I'm Morgan Jackson. I'm a PhD student at the University of Guelph in Ontario, Canada.
Hi, I'm Tom Housley. I'm a PhD student at the University of Stirling in Scotland.
And since I didn't manage to introduce myself, I'm Stephen Hamblin, postdoc at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia. But we've got our special returning guest, which I think is the first time we've had a guest on again, isn't it? But we're joined by Anthony again, and he's coming to us today so that we can do a special meta episode. But Anthony, go ahead.
So I'm Anthony Salvagno. I'm a physicist at the University of New Mexico, and today I'm representing the SciFund Challenge, which normally operates under the guise of crowdfunding, but we're actually doing an outreach course for scientists to train them how to do scientific outreach. And so, as part of the outreach course, we would like to introduce other mechanisms of science outreach as opposed to just straight up physical interaction and what everybody knows of as online interaction in the form of social media and blogs. That's why I came to you guys.
So you guys are moving past the every scientist should have a blog model? Is that what we're...
Yeah, so right now it's mostly just to get people familiar with science communication, and we're just trying to show them other mechanisms of science communication outside of just what everybody assumes it is in the online environment.
So what are those assumptions?
What are some of the assumptions? I think it's mostly just, a lot of people just assume it's social media and blogging. And we haven't done like a questionnaire as to find out how much people know about outreach efforts. And I assume that a lot of scientists actually don't know that much about outreach, as is what I've obtained from the class itself, just asking different students and stuff like that. But as far as outreach goes, we find that it's right now it's mostly just about communication and becoming comfortable with communicating with whatever audience you're talking to at the time, whether it be journalists or friends and family or people that you see at a museum or so on and so forth.
All right, so let's flip the model a little today. Normally, since you're coming onto our podcast, we'd ask you a bunch of questions, but you've got some questions and stuff for us, I presume. So if you want to take the reins and go ahead and just have at it.
Okay, great. So I guess the first question is, why did you guys get started with video podcasting as your outreach mechanism?
Well, I guess I can kind of take that one because the whole podcast began as actually a joke, right? It was a joke on
fitting.
Twitter.
It's fitting because it is kind of a joke.
Yeah.
But one day, Morgan and I were kind of just screwing around on Twitter, and I made a joke that we should start a biology comedy hour, and that was May of last year. And then Raphael got involved. He's not here today, but and Crystal Ernst, Geek in Question, as well. And then Bug Girl jumped in, and before I knew it, we had half a dozen people looking to do a podcast. So I was searching for a way to make that happen, and Google Hangouts was just starting out as a viable mechanism for that about that time. They just started doing Hangouts on air, and this was all very new. So it seemed like a reasonable way to do it that would have a minimum of technical requirements, which is kind of important because, I mean, we have enough trouble with it as it is. Getting 6 people on a Skype call or, doing other methods of video conferencing just weren't going to work. Although I know, Bug, you've got some ideas here because you did the Skeptics podcast for a while, right? And you guys had a different way of doing it?
Yeah, I've done a bunch of different podcasts. So the Skeptics and Skeptics Guide to the Universe I've been on several times, podcasts for them. And then also Skeptically Speaking, which actually runs as a radio show. in Canada, and I think I counted it up one time. I think I've been on 17 different podcasts.
So have you done other video podcasts, or is this the first video one?
No, you guys are the only ones that get my mug on camera because I do use a pseudonym. And so it's only just in the last year that I've really been out as, bug girl, and really have been in an employment place where it doesn't really matter if my face and my pseudonym get connected. When I was still working for the state, that was a big issue.
I don't know.
So you saw her here first.
That's right.
Anthony, this might be something that your viewers are going to be interested in, the issue of pseudonyms, or using people's real names or their effects on their career.
Yeah, that's something that we talked about a lot, actually. The first week of the course, which was last week, was a lot of group chat, which I called group therapy, and we were talking about the fears of doing scientific outreach and how it may or may not impact your career. And so it was basically what kind of hurdles do you think that you would face in your outreach efforts? So you knowing that there was a situation where you actually had to use a pseudonym and not be tied to a real person is actually good to know. How did that affect your job? Were
Me?
there any close calls? Yeah.
Oh, hell yes. Well, essentially what the issue for me was that I was a high-level administrator, and I worked for a state government, and I also taught. And so if I was going to be online saying things about, this particular product is bullshit, this particular public policy is bullshit, as a state employee, it's good to have a little distance there, but also in the state of Michigan, which was where I was working at the time, they have lobbying laws so that I am not allowed to have an opinion about the state and its policies as a state employee. So what happened was my position and most of the extension service was cut in 2009 and then again in 2010. And as a blue woman with antennae on the internet, I said, this is bullshit. And what happened was a whole bunch of other state employees saw that and started passing it around, going, this is awesome, you got to read this. And then I got outed to my boss, and so she ordered me to stop having any online activities under my pseudonym. And so it wasn't a major thing in the sense of I could lose my job, but it was a huge thing in terms of it was certainly really uncomfortable to be in that position. And had I not, had I been in a different place, who knows? And there certainly are some people, I know there are some public health employees, a lot of people that have NIH funding that really feel very inhibited and want to use a pseudonym just in case. The truth is, if you use a pseudonym, you're still not safe. It just makes it harder for people to find out who you are. But it wasn't that hard for people to out me. And fortunately for me, the amount of, if you use your pseudonym to do nasty things, you're going to be outed. If you use your pseudonym to do positive things, even if you are outed, it's okay.
One thing, I've been in this position a few times of talking to people about various forms of outreach, sometimes in a more formal setting. And one of the things that always comes up is, how do we do outreach and what effect it has on us? And one of the things I always reply is you can choose your level of engagement with these activities, right? So this podcast it was meant as a informal chat type. We're not a strict, we're going to get a list of things in science that happened this week and analyze them technically. It was scientists who just like to talk, right? So we talk about stuff scientists like, and sometimes it's science related and sometimes it's not. We just chat. So we started out that way. But you can engage at all kinds of levels. You can be someone who keeps it really professional and talks only about various science things, or you can be someone who ranges all over the map, like Buck. She does technical stuff. She does more opinion stuff. She's been on all kinds of forums, and actually, I really like her online presence. But you have choices, and you can control it. You just have to decide what you want to do.
I know Bug just mentioned that having other communications via her pseudonym, but did you guys have any other outreach experience / enterprises before you started doing this podcast?
Well,
I did. The rest of you guys?
yeah, Bug did. I was blogging and Twitter.
Yeah.
I have a blog and Twitter.
Blog and Twitter.
Yeah, me too.
But you had a Tumblr, so that's totally different.
That's a
I had a
blog.
Tumblr and a blog. It was
Tumblr
just
is
then
a
I
blog.
realized.
I
Well,
really liked
so-
Tom's blog before I knew him. I mean, I still like your blog. But
Yeah,
even
you
when
don't
I
have to
first
stop liking that.
No, but even when I first started my own blog, one of the first links I included was Tom's blog because I thought it was really great. I will say that Stephen and Morgan have one of the best Twitter bromances I've ever known. It's true. I mean, you guys know it, right?
Well, my online
Come
heart
on.
beats for him.
That's true.
That's true.
The really important thing about this, though, is it lets you have a network of colleagues that are, I guess we're on, 3 continents here?
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
yeah.
3.
And so if you're someone who's in a smaller department or you're in a really remote area, this lets you have that same sort of coffee talk that you would have hanging around at the coffee pot, except that you can have it with an incredibly extended range of people geographically. Never mind.
Actually, Morgan and Raphael have a good example of that because they started the Evolutionary Biojournal Club online in kind of using the same tools as we're using here, but a different format. So they're talking it's a journal club, so they're talking papers, but it enables them to network a group of people interested in the same subject from all over who wouldn't normally have the chance to meet and chat about this stuff.
Yeah. It's
So
not geared so much for outreach to outside of the community. It's more outreach within the community and discussing ideas and such. So there's different ways of talking about outreach, I suppose.
Yeah. But I mean, of course, to the interested outsider, that's available to them as well if they want to get
Yeah,
a
for
little
sure.
more.
It's open, so.
So I guess kind of switching gears a little bit, since most of you had blogs, or all of you had blogs before you did this, what was it like going from the blog platform to the video platform, where you're basically not thinking about what you're going to say way in advance and kind of whittling it down to at least coherent sentences? No knock on you guys.
So you do
Yeah.
you do listen. All right. I think that's much easier to do this because sometimes Stephen and Morgan do a lot of the work, and sometimes it's just showing up, and you get the opportunity to listen, to a cool person explain their research and ask questions. Sometimes we do a little background reading.
Some of us are
Sometimes.
better at homework than others, but I think it's totally different. For me, it's been a nice change because I struggle with writing. I have a hard time doing it. And I've been dealing with writing cramps and stuff for the last couple of months. So this has been a nice outlet for me to use a different part of my brain to express my love of science and try and get some ideas out there. Rather than banging my head against the keyboard and hoping something useful comes out of it.
How many of
Tom?
you guys ever considered a video dissertation?
A video, like a live casting the dissertation?
Yeah.
Well, that was pretty close to what we did with you, isn't it?
That would have been my defense.
Somebody else, Jacqueline Gill.
Yeah.
She
did.
Yeah, I watched her give her dissertation. I would crap myself. There's no way I could do that.
Could not have done that.
I would be so nervous. But yeah, she live streamed her whole thing.
Yeah. We talked to her about that too as well.
Yeah. Maybe before I saw myself on video so much, I would have considered it, but no, not now. Never.
Yeah, you'd have to ask Morgan and Tom because most of us are already over that hurdle. So
I've thought about it. I actually have thought about it, and I think it'll be difficult to convince my advisors to let me do it, but I actually am thinking about doing it. But that's going to be like 3 years down the road, so then it'll be in 3D and be awkward.
It's a different system over here anyway, so the defense is basically you have the student and then an internal examiner and an external examiner just in a room. So it would be kind of weird if you set up a webcam.
Morgan, if you could do it as a hologram, do you promise that you will?
Totally. If I can holodeck my dissertation, I'm there.
That would be amazing.
I just want to see it in 3D because it would be like, here's my specimen.
Ooh. Ooh. Put your glasses on now, folks.
except Tom would be pulling crickets out of his pants.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably a
Eating.
good thing it's just him and somebody else in the room.
Eating nuptial gift snacks.
Ew. Ew.
Poor Anthony.
Yeah, I was going
I'm
to
so
say
sorry.
I haven't done that, but I totally have.
The other benefit of video chatting is you learn so much more about the people that you're chatting with.
Yeah.
I'm sure for you guys, you learn something new every time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
On the upside, because I'm a kind and gentle soul, some of this doesn't make it into the final product.
Most
Which actually
does.
leads me to the next question is like, how much time does it take to do one of your podcasts, like from start to finish?
Well, from start to finish, we start off we have an internal emailing list in which we kind of talk about, stuff, who's going to come on, what time we're going to do it. Actually, one of the most challenging parts of the podcast is arranging a time because we are across 3 continents and time zones are a real mess, especially after daylight savings came and bumped us off a couple hours. So, but once we clear that hurdle and we get a time that works for everyone, so that can take a little while just back and forth in email. The actual podcast recording is usually fairly straightforward. I've had some problems this week with Google, but usually it takes, so we keep the recording itself down to a strict half hour. And then we have, a little chat before and after. So it usually takes about an hour to record.
Mm.
Then the video gets uploaded to Google. I pull it down as a video file and edit it at home. And the editing process usually takes me about an hour to an hour and a half. And then I re-upload it as the finished product, which takes another half hour to do. So sum total investment for me is about 3 to 4 hours a week. And then for everyone else, it's pretty much show up and record.
Yeah. There's a lot of logistics going on because now we're starting to get into a lot of getting new guests on. When we first started, it was mostly just the 4, 5, 6 of us getting together and tossing all sorts of baloney around. But since we started about January, we kind of re-geared the podcast, and we've had a lot of guests on and cut it down. So it's been a little bit of more work trying to find guests for every week or every other week. So if you're listening to this and you'd like to come on to Breaking Bio, please contact us and make our life easier. So sometimes it's a challenge to arrange them. And again, time zones gets complicated as well, and people have lives. So that does take a little bit of time, but nothing near what Stephen puts in for editing and directing and producing.
Yeah, we also have to balance the constraints of everybody having grad careers and they've got theses to write and stuff. So people drop in and out. I mean, our original crew included people who are either not with us anymore, who they're not dead.
They're still alive. They're still alive.
But just for time constraints, they couldn't do it, or we.
It's not supposed to be a terminal degree.
Yeah.
So
we've got a cast of, I don't know, what are we up to now? About 10 or 12 people that will have hosted. We call them co-hosts, and they'll pop in once in a while, ask some questions for an episode, and then get busy with work.
Yeah. We were stoked when we had Heidi join us. She was the most recent addition, and actually has been one of the better additions so far. Tom's been a complete lightweight, so we're looking to get rid of him.
So before you guys started getting a constant stream of guests, what were your discussions mostly about? Was it like you guys just getting together and just shooting the shit for a while, or did you actually like have a premeditated plan before going into each discussion?
We tried that a couple times, and it just didn't really go very well.
We would watch kind of the science news. The other problem was that at first we were pretty delayed, so if something new happened, we wouldn't actually publish the episode for like 3 weeks afterwards. So it was pretty old news by then. But we've gotten better about that. But we did try and structure it a little bit, and usually we'd come up with some topic. And I think our second episode we slandered George the tortoise horribly, the tortoise that died in Pinta. We went on about that for like 10 minutes. But usually it ended up revolving around some other topic that we found interesting. Grad school, challenges with grad school, options, outreach. It was just
academia.
a natural... Yeah, it was just turned into a natural...
And embarrassing yourself.
Yep, that happened a lot.
Usually Bug rolls in about halfway through the podcast, and things just, get weird from
Fall
there.
apart quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty much just like a pub talk. You start off with one tiny little anecdote, and then you talk about that for a little bit, and then it just evolves into places that you really didn't expect or hope that it would go.
Which again was the point of the podcast, right? It wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't supposed to be a list of topics. It was supposed to be just stuff we like to talk about. So.
Yeah, we're not quirks and quarks. We're just quirky.
But we're not in totally different fields. Like we go to, there's something that links us all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, except for me, because I'm the theoretician.
Yeah, but you still study evolution. I mean, you talk the
I
talk.
meant like Tom and Stephen are short. They have that in common.
Wow. You think I'm short?
That's
why she didn't see it to conferences.
I know everybody looks short to you, Heidi, but...
No, I thought you said you were short, because that's why you didn't see me at conferences.
No, I just meant I'm average height.
Oh, Anthony's short too.
Like you may not have seen me in the crowd because I'm about the same height as everyone else.
Oh, okay. So you're not an outlier.
No.
No, but we go, we're in a lot of the same field stuff.
Yeah.
So is it easier to have discussions where you're just kind of talking about related science news, or is it easier to talk to scientists who you have as guests?
That's a good question. It depends. Like sometimes one of us will bring somebody in from our discipline. So a couple of people on the podcast will be more familiar with their work, and so they might be asking more technical questions, whereas the rest of us are, usually me, asking newbie questions that are more entry level. So it's kind of interesting that way because, we'll shoot the shit like we are now between all of us, but when we bring, John Hutchinson in or some of our other guests, we'll be able to, as a group, come up with what I think is fairly engaging interviews out of the hive mind.
So who is your main audience? Is it anybody who wants to watch it, or are you targeted towards actual scientists in your field or science in general? Or
Yeah.
That's a good question that we probably really haven't answered or addressed. I guess we pretty much just put it out there. I think it's probably our target would be probably other grad students and scientists or those that are science literate. This isn't probably a podcast that somebody who doesn't have a lot of background in science is going to find overly interesting because we don't explain as much as maybe we could. So it's more of diversifying somebody's interest in science if they've got one already by exposing them to more options, more different fields of science or biology.
And that's something that's kind of evolving too. I mean, we're not really static on that. We may revisit that at some point in the future and maybe make it a little more open or not. I don't know. I've always thought of our audience as largely like that. Mostly other scientists or people who are really interested in scientific or mostly biological science.
So
what was the response from other people that saw you when you were on the podcast, like your students that you TA for, things like that?
The students,
I'm sure did you tell everyone?
Yeah, well,
Did you
were
tell
there.
anyone?
You saw me tell everybody. And actually, I had forgotten to do this during the podcast, but I told the class that if they watched, I was going to like wink and make some kind of motion to acknowledge that that was for them. Totally forgot to do it. And the next week they asked me about it. And I was like, oh, that just got edited out of the podcast.
Yeah.
Sorry, I threw you guys under the bus.
That's all right.
Well, that would be
But
me
actually-
because I'm the editor.
Yeah.
Which is why it's all right.
Yep.
But that's not joking. They actually really enjoyed it, and they thought it was really interesting. So as far as they were mostly like bio undergrads, is what my physics lab is, and they were pretty interested in it. I was surprised. I was surprised that they would be so deeply invested. Not because like it's you guys, but mostly because the stuff we were talking about, like open notebook science. And I guess I kind of just have like one last question, and that's if somebody was going to get started doing not necessarily this, but something similar, what advice would you have to get them started?
Oh dear God! Don't do it.
Oh.
No.
Just
I would say
kidding.
it's easier with a group of people if you're not
Yeah.
just one person.
Yeah.
You have a handful of people, it's much easier.
Yeah, rely on your colleagues. So even if you're just wanting to start a blog, it's easier if you jump in with somebody else's, ask to do guest posts to start, and maybe jump in as a second author on the blog, start like a community blog or something like that. It's easier when you've got a support system and you're not feeling like all the pressure is on you to produce all the content every week, every other week, whatever.
I would say if you're going to do something like this, like a podcast, where there's a definite structure to it, and you need to kind of keep things moving, there should be at least one or two people who are pushing it forward, right? Because otherwise, you get 6 or 8 people on a mailing list, and that's great, but then nothing will happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So somebody has to be driving a little bit,
Even if it's into the ditch.
yeah, as it so often is.
I think our episodes have got so much better since we switched to doing like a strict 30 minutes, and Stephen's really good at timing that now, because when we first started it, then we were just going on for ages and it would just kind of drift into not really talking about anything, whereas now you feel like at the end of the episode, we always think that Stephen's always finishing by saying, oh, we'd like to talk to you more, we could have you back again, and I'd like to think that maybe people who are watching are thinking, yeah, I'd like to see that person again, rather than going, this has gone on for about an hour and a half and this is terrible.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Cool. Well, thank you guys very much for having this discussion, and I hope that the classmates find that this is really useful.
All right, but no, thanks for coming on, Anthony. And I don't know about anybody else, but I enjoyed having a retrospective look at the Breaking Bio enterprise. 30 episodes in, and we're still going strong. So
Yeah.
here's
can't believe it's
to 70 more.
Yeah, I can't believe it was a year next week that this whole idea
Yeah.
was born. I didn't realize it was. Wow.
Actually,
What are you
yeah,
guys
we
doing
are.
to celebrate that night? I mean,
Happy anniversary, guys.
Thanks, Anthony.
Actually, this will probably be released on the anniversary.
Ooh.
Now that I
Very-
think about it.
That's
Yeah.
meta.
we should have like a 3-hour-long podcast where guests can come back, people can come in and out all night to the Google Hangout.
And we have a little flashback noise.
Yeah.
Meow.
Well, maybe we'll set that up for the 50th. But in any case, if you've enjoyed this and want to learn more, we're at breakingbio.com, or if you just want to know where to hunt us down. And so thank you for joining us, Anthony, for episode 30, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.